Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's episode of The Grill, a Desoladies talk show where we feature women in the Dota 2 community and talk about what they do, how they contribute, and all these interesting subjects about the Dota 2 community. This month we have Sajedene. How are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you?
Good, good. Just a brief introduction to who you are for the people.
I'm surprisingly not very good at interviews, but my name is Nikki, or Sajedene, as some people know me. Either one I respond to. I currently work as the general manager for MoonDuk.
Very nice. Don't worry about being bad at interviews. I am too.
Yeah.
So we'll do this together. So let's talk a little bit about like your background in esports, because you're I have been involved in Dota, well, not in the community, but a member of the community since 2013, and I remember hearing or seeing your name around that time. Like, you've been around for a long time, and you have quite a esports resume. You've been you've worn many different hats in the community.
Yeah.
So let's talk about so where did you start in esports? How did your journey in esports begin?
So I think the most common misconception that a lot of people have, which kind of sometimes makes me salty, is that I got into esports because of who I was dating. But I actually started because of, surprisingly enough, streaming. Well, maybe it's not that surprising, but I used to work in LA as a talent agent, and I would come home late because my hours were very long. I'll somewhere between 8 p.m. coming home at 8 p.m. is like early, so somewhere between like 10 to midnight. So when I come home, I'm like, I still want to game, I want to relax. And then all my friends were already like, well, I'm done for the night, I'm going to go to bed, blah blah blah, because we have work tomorrow. I'm like, okay. So I didn't really had anybody to play with, so I kind of started streaming because I wanted to have people to talk to and have people to find people to play with. That got me introduced to some players who would stop by my stream because they were like, oh, what do you do? Well, I'm an agent. And then they're like, oh, can you help me with this? So I actually started working in esports, doing that as players would consult me on their esports contracts when they are dealing with orgs. So like some of the first few orgs that I actually ended up working with, I at the time didn't register in my head how big they were, except for Team Liquid, because I was a big StarCraft fan.
Yeah.
But it kind of went from there, and then ended up meeting the Dota Cinema people, and then Suns fan, and worked with them, and I guess the rest just kind of fell into place that way.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that. So you were working as a talent agent in LA first and foremost, and then people came to you for help.
Yeah.
That's really neat. So this kind of talks about my second question, or goes into it. On your website profile, you have that you occasionally serve as a consultant for companies, influencers, and players.
Yeah.
So you talked about contracts. Is that most of the consulting you do, or what does that scope include?
It's a bit of both. So I've done contract work. Like, I don't draft contracts because I let the lawyers do that stuff. I'll read through some of the terms and oh, well, you should be getting a cut of, their sponsorship sales. If they're not going to give you that, then you need to be asking for this instead. So kind of figuring out nuances of what the terms would be. And then if there are some glaring, crazy ones, especially when you're dealing with international paperwork, then I'll let them know, hey, this is something that you kind of also need to be aware of. I do a lot of sponsorship and sales consulting as well. Actually, some of the first clients that I had weren't even in Dota. It was in Counter-Strike and YouTube, since even as a talent agent we had a division that dealt with YouTubers. So I actually would talk to them about their branding, their content, what people are looking for, especially in the more traditional / non-endemic space. It's a very different audience, and especially when you're dealing with the old school crowd, then we have that. I've done consulting for I guess orgs like trying to see like, well, oh, okay, what would be attractive to players, since I've worked on the player side and I work with players, and then kind of like on the opposite end as well, where players would come to me again, like like asking, well, is this good? Is this good? Should I do this? Should I do that?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that's most of the consulting that I do.
That's a lot.
And then streaming as well. Yeah, and then same thing with streamers and all that stuff.
Oh, okay,
like,
so you do help streamers out too.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Do you do like, is it kind of like a freelance thing that you do, like on a case-by-case basis, and people will like reach out to you and be like, hey, Sajedene, can you like help me out with this, sponsorship package or something like that? Okay, cool. Yeah,
I usually like, I don't ever advertise or say like, hey, I do this, or I'm available for that, because a lot of times my plate's already full with doing like like before I was doing like the DC stuff, and then like doing MoonDuk stuff. So I try not to, because I can only do so much, and I feel like it's a disservice to someone if I can't like fully commit to them. And then at the same time, it doesn't stop them from messaging me, which I appreciate. And at the same time, I'm like, I can't,
Yeah, it can get a little overwhelming if you're already busy.
Yeah.
So you also worked with Digital Chaos, like you mentioned, as the team manager, right? Okay, so what kind of skills did you acquire as a team manager for Digital Chaos?
Probably like a lot of time management. My role as the team manager wasn't just the team manager, because we were a startup org, literally with like, technically just me and Shannon and our financial backer. So it's one of those like, the wearing the many hats again. Like, I was the manager. I had to travel with the team. I had to, babysit, be the mom, make sure that they're fed, make sure that, their clothes are washed. And I'm like, oh yeah, like I had to do that. And then at the same time, I handled the finances. I was part of the sponsorships. I was part of like sales outreach and sponsor fulfillment. And in any other org or in a larger org, those roles are done by different people. Like there's specific positions in the company, and I had to do that. So for me, definitely like time management and learning not to go crazy, even though it was pretty difficult not to let it get to you, like having to do all that. So what was your favorite tool to use? Like Trello, Google Drive? I'm very traditional. It's my planner.
You use a planner?
I hardcore, like I write everything down. I do trackers. I like the whole, it's like a combination of like what the bullet journal people use and a more set like planner, since I don't have time to do it myself sometimes.
I'm with you on that. There's something really like, if I write it, it's just more like in my head than it is if I type it. So,
exactly.
Yeah, I feel you. I'll have to get with you. I need to find a planner actually. So
there's many kinds. Like I can go into like a whole thing with you. So feel free to like message me and ask, like, what planners like do you recommend? There's so many kinds, and I'm like,
I know. Well, I go to the store and I look, and it's like I can't seem to find one that has exactly what I need. Like it might have part of one thing and part of another thing, or it's too big or too small. So I'll get with you on that.
All right.
Shout out if anybody needs planner recommendations. You should make a planner guide for people.
Oh my gosh.
Another thing to add to your list.
Right.
So, how have your experiences streaming for Dota audiences influenced or helped you as a tournament organizer for MoonDuk?
I think it's just like understanding the audience. Is a very big thing. A lot of us, it's not just myself actually, like a lot of us at MoonDuk are, we're all content creators. We're all very creative. Like, you have Slacks, you have, like Sunspan, and like doing like the DC, like everybody else like have done streams like on an individual basis besides casting. And it's understanding and being able to relate to that audience, because you do it on a personal level. So when you take it on take a bigger picture and say like, okay, we're not going to do a tournament. What do we know, Twitch likes? What does Reddit like? What does the YouTube audience like? Which are all very different personas within like that community that want very different things. I think that's like, even like with the DC introduction video, you know, that's how we learned, oh, well, our YouTube audience definitely is completely different than a Reddit audience. Obviously, there's that merge. Mm-hmm. And when you're dealing with like that large of a number of people like tuning in, then you kind of have to be like, all right, we need to find that balance. And
find that happy medium.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, good. So this isn't a question, but can you please tell me about your cats?
Oh, I can go on forever. I love cats.
How many do you have?
We have 3 right now.
Okay.
I always try to hint at getting a 4th because, you know, they come in pairs.
Yes.
But, I mean, they're very good. Like, they're cute cats. They're Scottish folds, although one of them is Scottish straight, I guess, because her ears are not folded.
Oh, okay.
Very friendly, very affectionate. They follow us around. I wouldn't be surprised if they're literally like right outside the door because I had to close the door right now. Although people would be like, well, why didn't you just let them in and let them wander around?
My cat climbs up here, so she might jump up here at some point. People are usually like, we're only here for the cat.
I know. What kind of cat do you have? See, I look at it, I'm like, what cat do you have?
I have, one's over there. I have one tortie. Who she has like the exact half face.
Oh, really?
She's also missing a leg. She's got 3 legs. Her name's Chelsea.
She's a tripod.
Yeah, she's a tripod. She was hit by a car before we adopted her.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's like about 3 years old, and then we have Lanaya. Her name's Chelsea, and then we have Lanaya, who was our first cat, and she's just kind of like a mix of something. We found her.
Yeah.
A friend of ours found her next to a dumpster all by herself, so we like took her in when she was a baby, and she's our little baby, but yeah. We have 2 cats, so.
That's so cute.
Yeah. So what are the names of your cats?
So we have Monkey, and then Pookie, who is named after Garfield's bear. Mm-hmm. And then Bucket. Like the bucket, yeah.
Bucket.
Bucket. Well, we were kind of joking around on the names, like, what if we name our cat Bucket? And we were like, oh, that's actually kind of cute. So.
That is cute. Okay, so we'll talk about now, like, kind of like what you're currently working on as the MoonDuk manager. So as a general manager of MoonDuk, what kinds of tasks are you in charge of?
So I'm in charge of a little bit of everything, where, like, our day-to-day, for example, making sure that I'm trying to think, like, how to go about this. So if I wake up, I answer like emails, like we do like our sales and sponsorships, having to deal with some of the like outside contractors that we work with, and then planning like the next tournaments, because you know, I think one of the biggest things like we learned is like, you don't just try to plan the tournament a couple of weeks before you want it.
Yeah.
So it's like just kind of following up on a lot of that, following up on making sure they, you know, teams give me their payment information so that we can pay them for captain's draft, like stuff like that. Arranging like schedules. So making sure like, hey guys, I put What the Duck on the calendar for tomorrow. Who's gonna be there? And then like, oh, you know, make sure you're there. And then like so doing like strategic meetings. We have like meetings like once a week, just making sure that the right people who are supposed to be there doing that. If there's, you know, casting going on, making sure that people have like the right like assets or overlays, trying to deal with any potential issues that come up, like with spots, like pretty much everything, kind of like doing a little bit of everything. Like you could say it's like we assign like project managers for some of our different tournaments, for example. Okay. And so they'll usually be like in charge, or they're the brain of that project, and then I'm also there helping. So it's almost like a project manager assistant for that specific thing. So
and you like delegate specific tasks to people,
right?
And you'll kind of oversee everything.
Exactly. Okay. Yes. You I'm much more eloquently said than I. But
it's okay. It's
exactly. Okay. I don't know. I told you I'm not great at interviews. What do I do?
It's fine. Don't worry about it.
This is me planning, like, trying to. Oh, this is what I should say.
No, it's cool. You have a lot of different things that you do. I mean, you just listed like 8 different responsibilities, and that's probably all like daily or weekly. So,
yeah.
I mean, there's a lot to go into.
Exactly.
So, y'all did the DC Minor recently. So, how was that as your first event as a tournament organizer?
Oh. Learned a lot.
Yeah.
So I was project manager pretty much for that one. I'm project manager again for the next one. So that's on top of having to do the general, company stuff, trying to do that. There's definitely a lot of things that people don't take into consideration when planning a tournament because, as an audience member, you just see the final product. And it's like, there, the months of planning beforehand, it's not necessarily visible. And there's a lot of factors that people like forget to consider, or even like other people within the scene forget to consider. And at the same time, it's like not an excuse, or I'm not trying to excuse some of the failings of like other events or other situations, but at the same time you get more sympathetic because you're like, shit happens,
Yeah.
Like having to think about, like, for example, transportation when teams arrive at the airport. Like we were at a very bad like time frame where it's after the holidays. No team was at like a boot camp or at a tournament somewhere that I could just fly them in as a group. I had to fly like 80% of the players from like the individual locations that they were spending their holidays from. So my travel budget was just destroyed because you can't, most of the tournament orgs, it's like when you're at a good spot, you kind of are able to like work it out with someone else. Like, well, if they're going to your tournament and then they have to fly 2 hours next, maybe you handle this leg and we'll handle that leg, or you're just booking them as a group anyway and they're only flying from there, then that's fine. And you can't just book like whatever the cheapest flight is, because you also have to remember, I'm not going to put, players in a 22-hour flight. Like, that's ridiculous. I have to like find that balance. And then, well, once they get here, how are they going to get to the hotel? Who's going to make sure that they're being able to pick up? And while someone's having to handle that, I have to go handle, I have to help them check in. Not everybody can speak English. What if someone forgot their passport? What if someone forgot their luggage?
Yeah.
And then, so it's like that, and that's just like hospitality.
Yeah,
and then
that's just one thing.
That's just like the one thing, and that I haven't even like touched into like, well, what are they going to eat? You have this team that are requiring like, vegetarian options, and then this other team that are like, we want McDonald's. What are we gonna? Where's McDonald's?
Yeah.
God bless Uber Eats again. you know what I'm saying? And having to do catering, like that's another cost. Oh, there's the cat.
There's Lanaya.
Yes.
This is Lanaya.
Oh, so cute.
Hey.
Hi. You can't hear me anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then. So that's just the teams and the players, and then you have the sponsors. Like, hey, I want to come see what my money is paying for. Where, like, oh, our thing's not visible. We want it to be seen. And then you have the talent. Like, oh, like how often am I going to be casting? Like, where am I supposed to go? And it's just like all those little details. And then the audience, like, oh, it's so cold. Yeah, don't worry, we're bringing heaters in, because it's like we just happen to be in the middle of like the coldest winter apparently that the East Coast has faced in like a long time.
Yeah.
So it's just like this is like my dump of like everything that, just like one right after the other and after the other, and you just have to be ready for it.
I hope that you had a nice, like, hour-long massage after that weekend. Because, like, hearing that sounds like it was just a lot to even just think about.
But out of everything that I've done in esports, I feel like it was the most satisfying because, yeah, it's so weird because to me, I'm like, I did all this. Like, all that months of no sleep and frustration and anger and the conversations I would have with, like, Shannon, I'm like, is this going to happen? Oh my God, we're not going to be able to do this. We're going to have to cancel them, our tournament. And then we're like, just like dumbfounded. And then suddenly the next day we're like, oh my God, it worked out. And then to see it, to see the stage, to see the audience, to see them be like, it was cold, but I had so much fun, blah, blah, blah. Like, can't wait for you guys to do it again. I think to me, out of like everything, like that was the most satisfying because you don't get a lot of gratification doing all of the other stuff. It's very rare for you to hear you say, oh, you know, like you did good, you did good.
Yeah.
And this, like, I may not necessarily hear that, like, oh, I did good, but I'm like, I did that, you know, and it's like, I could see. So that's good. Oh, I can't get over your cat. It's so cute. Oh, why can't my cat sit like that? Okay, I need to change my chair.
Yeah, my chair, like, you should see the back side of this chair. It's, like, completely torn out.
Because
they, like, claw on it.
That's awesome. I have to put the same thing. It doesn't stop them from destroying these chairs.
Really? Yeah, my chair's, like, the only piece of furniture that they claw on. So
yeah, I think they like that texture.
They do, yeah. Because, like, our couch is, like, suede, you know, like, micro suede.
They don't touch it, right?
It doesn't feel good, I guess, for their claws, but, yeah, they've destroyed my chair.
But it's a comfy chair, because
it's pretty comfy, but it doesn't have adjustable armrests. It's, like, super low, so I have, like, 0 arm support, so that kind of, like, you know, gets a little...
That's the downside.
Yeah, but... It is pretty comfortable for, like, just kick back and, like, watch some TV on my computer kind of thing. Okay. And, of course, the perk is Lanaya comes and spends time with me, so... I'm
like, is that worth it? I'm like, seriously, sorry. Okay, I'm not... Cat, I can't...
It's fine, it's fine. So, for the DC minor, you were basically, like, the primary person that was organizing the event? Or were you working with, like, a small team, or...
So I was like the one in charge. It was in the, so prior to getting to the event itself, like, you know, it was like a partnership between me and Shannon, like, you know, because we've kind of done it. Like, I was there from the very beginning of Captain's Draft when we first started with like Cinderin and XMG, and we were just like in a little tiny apartment, and we were like, oh, you know, and it was on like MLG and everything. And then starting for the second one, I was actually the producer, so I ran production by myself for Captain's Draft 2. So we had like our setup where his computer and that monitor is like wired to mine, and I'm like doing like all of the audio, queuing everything in, and I'm like, so I learned how to do production doing that. And then third Captain's Draft again, it was like at our house where we flew in like all of the MoonDuk people there, and then it turned, oh, now we have a LAN. So it's just like a growth thing. So it's almost like it's like our child that, you know, to see it like change from that to this. And then, but once we got there, especially like having him be talent, that's when he's on stage, anything that's like on fire in the back or everything that needs to be done, I'm like handling. So I have like someone like helping me with hospitality, and then like, you know, trying to figure out like all of the administrative issues and the tech issues that we would happen, like making sure like, you know, talking to our production crew about like, hey, what can we do about the lighting? What can we do about, you know, this light or the heat coming in on it? Let's bring in generators. And like, oh, the sponsor says like, hey, we talked to the food trucks, like, let's get this happening, like, let's promote it. Okay, promote the food trucks, promote. So it's just like making sure that all of these things, that the different nodules, I guess, or, you know, different group, like clusters of things that need to happen get done. It gets filtered through me, and then I have to be like, whoosh.
In an organized fashion.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. What did your daily schedule look like during the DC event?
So
how early was it? Like, yeah, I guess like more like what was your timeline?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, so we found out pretty late that we got the minor. I think we found out definitely after TI. Probably not until let's see, September, October-ish, because then we had to immediately do the qualifiers, and since we knew the date. And then the fact that there's a holiday, and most people, unlike eSports, right, they take Christmas, New Year's off. Yeah. So we couldn't even wait until that time to get people's visas done, because that's, I think, like a big thing that a lot of people, like, you know, like try to not or forget to take into consideration, is that you need to have a good amount of time between some, like, especially specific regions and their qualifiers, to when the actual event is, because they have to apply for visas, and you have to assume that what if they get denied and they have to reapply again, all that stuff. So that was October, and then starting November, it's and then even prior to that, we were finding location, finding hotels. Well, we had our actual venue. The actual event itself didn't start until the 4th. I had teams arriving as early as the 2nd, which thank God none of them complained about. So thank you to that. Thank you, teams. And we were there day after Christmas. So like 26th, we flew into DC to start prepping everything. Had to make sure that that the internet at the hotel was good, that we had to do our own setups. Like we built our own chairs. That was fun.
Probably took a while.
It was a group of us, like me, Sun's fan, even Slacks, we flew out Slacks early because we had to do content. Mod came out early, so it was like a nice group effort, and I think that's definitely something that really works out to our benefit, is that we're all, despite who they are, I guess, because I'm despite who they are, they're not one to be oh, I'm too good for this. Why am I doing? I'm just here. Exactly. Yeah. So it was greatly appreciated, and we have a few others Korok that came out too. We were just building chairs. We had one day to build chairs, and then ship that to the hotel, and then we had tables, thank God, and set up all the PCs. So had to have all of that ready at least by the 2nd when teams started landing. So when the teams were, they were finalizing all of the setup, and then I was starting to teams to start arriving at this time. So I had a whole spreadsheet of, this people arrived this time, and then making sure that our transportation is there and picking them up. So arriving wasn't so bad, and then once the tournament day starts, you're up at 6 in the morning. People teams want to start practicing as early as 8 a.m. if they could. I mean, at the hotel they could practice whenever. They had their practice rooms 24 hours, but at the venue, I think we had teams starting to arrive by I think 8 a.m. we were at the venue already, just prepping, making sure everything's ready to go live between 8 to 8:30 or 9:30, because you go live at 10. So I think that's last call is 9:30. If you're not here, you're late. And then just kind of go live, go from there.
See what happens.
See what happens, and then bananas I think is the most important thing. Apparently, that every tournament needs to provide. My God, you have no idea
potassium.
how many bananas these teams consume. It is insane. I hate bananas, and I'm
I'm not.
And you have to buy boxes of them every day. It's insane.
So how late were you at the arena usually?
So depending on the last game, but we're usually gone by 8 or 9. The last day is where we had to do breakdown and stuff, remove everything from there. So that's probably where we stayed the latest. I think we were there 10-ish or so.
Okay. That's not too bad.
But no, it's not. The production crew that we worked with were very efficient in breaking everything down. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Cool. So, what were some of the things that you learned from handling the DC minor?
I've really put into practice my time efficiency, and it's very, I think something that I kind of already knew, but was validated during the tournament, and I think a lot of people definitely don't realize, is that you can have a good product. It doesn't necessarily mean sponsors will come. Is the hardest thing. It's the hardest pill to swallow for a lot of people, especially I think for the Dota community, where we just hear, oh, just run a good tournament and people will sponsor you, and people are well, like, we run good tournaments. Come sponsor us. They're like, oh, well, we're already sponsoring this team. So that's the thing, right? You know, people always say, like, as a tournament organizer, and why, like, we tend to sell out, or, you know, when people, like, sell out and stuff, it's like, you kind of have to, because otherwise, how am I going to run a tournament? I think we've been pretty lucky with our sponsors, but, you know, I'm not just competing, or, like, we're not just competing. So, for example, Captain's Draft. I'm not just competing with the next, like, major or minor out there. Technically, I'm also competing with Midas Mode, because if a sponsor can only sponsor one tournament, and he had to pick one or the other, and they were within, like, the same, like, you know, general quarter, what do they choose? So that's in an internal competition. And we're not going to turn it away, because, you know, we want both tournaments to happen. And it's going to be the same thing this year. We're trying to do, you know, our tournaments, and they're like, hey, sponsors, which one do you want? Please sponsor all of them. So it's an internal, like, issue. And then at the same time, having to compete with, like, all of these other majors and minors within, like, the Dota sphere. But besides that, I'm also now competing with, you know, LCS. I'm competing with Overwatch League, because if I was, like, I don't know, Steel Series, and I'm already sponsoring, you know, some tournament in a different game, I don't necessarily have the budget for Dota. And Dota is not necessarily the best, you know, use of my money anyway.
Yeah.
And then besides that, I'm also competing with teams. If I was, you know, this sponsor, and I could, you know, and I'm only throwing money at, you know, I only have X amount of money, I'd rather sponsor a team.
Yeah.
Than I would sponsor a tournament organizer. And I've had to deal with that, because when I do consulting, I'm like, hey, what's up? They're like, oh, do you know what team I can sponsor? I'm like, yeah, sure, let me hit you up. But if you're ever interested in sponsoring a tournament, I have those too. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, it's okay, we'll do a team.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right. You know, so it's a very tough, like, scene. And I think people don't get enough, like, don't give that enough, like, weight or credit to understand that when you're given a sponsorship opportunity, you kind of have to take it. You know, it might not necessarily be the best business decision from an outside perspective, but you take where the money comes from sometimes. Otherwise, it's either that or no tournament at all.
Beggars can't be choosers.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you think that, like, more sponsors will be, like, drawn to Dota over time, or do you think, like, something needs to change specifically for that to happen?
I'm really hoping. I'm really hoping that, or I was kind of hoping that the circuit would be something like that, because that's definitely a big thing.
It's, like, more stable.
For sponsors. Yeah, is having, like, that stability. But then at the same time, there's too much of it, I feel like, where if I don't get to sponsor this minor, I can just sponsor the next one.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not a big deal.
The pro
right?
circuit is, like, really active right now. It's like there's always Dota going on, so yeah. I can see that would do it. And
it's still, like, it's not like I'm sponsoring. That's the difference, I think, with Overwatch League and LCS, is that you may have just as many games, maybe even more on their end, but it's just the one product. So you're guaranteed at least, or you get a general idea of what the numbers and the audience is going to be like day to day every time. Whereas, you know, for this one, well, this minor is at, you know, is in the US, or is in the East Coast, and then this minor is, you know, in Europe. This minor is in Asia. It's different time zones, different demographics every time. There's no consistency. And if I'm a sponsor that has a predominantly Southeast Asian market, well, I know what I'm sponsoring, because they're the ones that get to see it at that time. And I would love, for example, like, I'll watch, like, you know, the Southeast Asia tournaments, and it's not like I don't have access or connections to, say, some of their sponsors, but why would, say, a company from the Philippines be sponsoring our tournament when, you know, it's different everything. So it's kind of a bummer like that. Whereas if it was just, like, the general, like, this is it, then sponsors like, all right, I gotta get in it. Otherwise, there's no getting in it at all. So it's kind of tough. So we'll see how it plays out, I guess, for round 2.
Yeah, I'm sure like post TI we'll see some changes. Yeah. I would imagine. Seems like that's how Valve does things.
Yeah. I mean, that's the good thing about them is they're very good and very flexible in figuring out and seeing what works and what works. I think for me,
they're not afraid to change things.
Yeah. The only thing that I wish would come back is, the workshop, but who knows? It's like, that was a good way. Being able to crowdfund majors and minors, I think would be great because the community is really good at that.
You mean like through like compendiums and stuff?
Yeah, like the compendiums and whatnot. And I don't even, I think similar to our Captain's Draft, where Captain's Draft 2 or, is it 2? We made our own compendium, so Valve, we don't need to even have, we don't need to bother you to do that stuff. We can do it ourselves. Just let us, I guess.
Yeah. So then the fans can kind of support like which kind of tournaments that they want to.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for something like that, that's it's a combination of a good tell of what companies need to be having tournaments, because the community, that's what we do, right? That's what we say is like, as a community, we can show with our money, right?
Yeah.
So.
For sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some things that people don't know or realize about managing an esports organization? It's a lot of work. I think the common misconception that I see of people getting into esports or getting like these opportunities, and it's like I'm not even shy. I will like straight up tell them, look, don't do this because it ruins your chances. It's like a lot of people think that when they get that opportunity, a lot of people think that it's like all fun and games. It's still a business in the end, and people are here to work. I think when people like get that opportunity or get that foot in the door to get into esports, they use it as I'm gonna have fun and like make and party, or use it as a way to like promote myself and get myself like in there more. And sure, networking is good, but there's a time and place and there's a proper way of doing it. And I think that people think that we're so different from all of these other industries. I think on the outside we definitely are, and I think, and it's good to embrace that. We don't need to be ESPN to be successful. But at the same time, I think a lot of people tend to underestimate how much of a suit a lot of people in the industry can be and are, as far as like sponsorships or how companies internally work in getting stuff done. It's still very traditional. I guess is the best way. It's still very corporate. It can be very corporate. I may not be waking up and having to put on a suit, like a dress suit anymore. Although I kind of miss that sometimes, but it's getting there. And then obviously there's other aspects where it's not, like contracts and all that. We're getting a lot better, I think, with people from non-endemics coming in more and more. But so I think that's definitely a thing. And then I guess that's about it. It's just like people think it's like just gaming. Like play games and that's how you run a business. It's still a business, so you have to do business. I guess for sure. For sure. So we're gonna take a brief little change of pace, and I've got a word association game for you, just to kind of change it up. It's gonna be quick. So I'm gonna tell you a word or short phrase, and you're just gonna tell me the first thing that comes to your mind. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Eternal Envy.
Oh, Ii-sama.
Offlane.
Oh, Bristleback.
NA Dota.
Oh, Gran.
Hashtag.
Oh, hashtag. Waffles? I don't know why.
Waffles? Okay. TI.
TI, my birthday.
Oh, really? Your birthday's on TI weekend?
Well, not this year, actually. Oh, usually it is.
Early
September? So every time I think of TI, yeah. Well, August, it's usually like early August, yeah. Okay. So every time I think TI, I'm like, your birthday.
So why waffles for the hashtag? Just curious.
I don't know.
I was expecting something like Dream Green or Green Wall.
I like food. I'm like hungry all the time, so.
That's relatable. Very relatable. Okay, cool. So let's talk about the future a bit. So you actually kind of touched on this already about like maybe what misconceptions people have about esports, but what advice do you have for people that might be pursuing a job in esports?
Oh, okay. So yeah, the thing that I said where I'm not afraid to tell people about it, right? Where they think like, oh, it's just all fun and games. Yeah, it's not all just fun and games. I think the other big thing, I think this is the biggest thing for people getting into esports, is making friends is good, but at the same time, you have to remember, I think, especially when it's interacting with players or with personalities in the scene, is that you may know everything about them because of their social media or their streams or Twitter or whatever, but they don't know anything about you. So that relationship that you think, like, you know, that they have with like their other peers or that they have with their audience in general, it's not necessarily the kind of relationship you guys already have with each other. So it really like I've seen it shut down a lot of people's opportunities in the esports scene. I've seen like people throw away management opportunities, people throwing away like, you know, just like any other like job opportunities because of how they interact with these. For example, like I can tell, like, you know, like I can have that like conversation with a player because I've known them for a long time.
Yeah.
Right. But if it's your first time meeting that player and it's your job to like say, make sure that, you know, say you're an admin at an event and it's your job to say, hey, you know, like turn that away. It's fine. You can, you know, be authoritative and tell them like, hey, you know, you shouldn't do it. But you can't do it in a way where it comes off as you're very familiar with them when they don't know you. And then I get that complaint and I'm like, all right, no, I'll do it. And it's not good because I don't know what to tell the player. Like this player is like, who the F is this person like talking to me as if like, you know, we've known each other for a long time. I don't know who he is. And now it's like very weird and awkward and you need to keep this person away from me. And I'm like, all right. And then you have to have that conversation. So.
Yeah. The over familiarity.
Exactly. And I don't know if a lot of people ever tell people that when they come in that, you know, hey, you know, you actually don't know these people. So you have to remember that. Just be chill and be nice. And then, you know, you'll get there.
Yeah. I think that's definitely something that's like kind of unique to esports is because like everybody, it's kind of like the conundrum between like when you're introducing yourself to someone at an event, it's like, do I use my real name or do I use my handle?
Right,
you kind of have like this merging of like professional, real world, and then like gaming hobby. So it can be kind of hard to like navigate that. But like you're saying, like if you're not sure, just expect them to not know who you are and be courteous like you would with a stranger.
Exactly.
Kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, if I've never, like, so, if, like, you know, if I've been watching, like, Dr. Disrespect this whole time, does not mean that he actually knows who I am. Yeah. That if I go and introduce myself and I try to be like, so, you know, what's it like to be, like, this or whatever, or like, haha, you know, you're an idiot. Like, I would never do that to somebody I don't know. So why would I do it to someone that I know just by watching, for example? I mean, it's so weird to like say like this is the thing that, you know, you need to learn getting into esports. I've seen it so many times, and I'm like, how is this a thing? How do people not realize this? But I guess it's, you know, it's there. You know, when some of these personalities do a really good job with connecting with people.
Yeah, and they have like an online persona.
Mm-hmm.
can be kind of hard for people to be like, oh, you're a real person.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's good advice. So what do you wish that you would have known before you got started in esports?
That it's a chaotic mess. I guess, and like in a good way, in a bad way, maybe it's just with the people that I work with. We're all like, crazy, chaotic, like creative types. Yeah. But it can be like, I think if you're coming in from like a very structured corporate world, it's pretty eye-opening it's definitely a lot better now. And again, it's still a business, and people, behind the scenes have, they're definitely much more relatable on that end, on the creative and on the player side. It's interesting. Like, like, I just want to play. I just want to do this. I just want to do that. I don't care about my contract. I don't care about this. I'm like, well, you should. Yeah. Like, so those to me are the biggest, like, what the heck? If this was in any other industry, you would be reading the file. You'd be walking away from this. But I get it. The opportunity is, to get into this scene is so strong, but you don't want to set yourself up. Like, I think you don't want to come in doing it like that.
Yeah.
Because it hurts you in the end.
Mm-hmm. So, if you can share, are there any upcoming big plans for MoonDuk that you can share with us?
It'll be like we have like, our tournaments that we're planning very soon. And then obviously with TI, I guess like I can't share too much, but at the same time, it's one of those, you can expect us to bring or to, to work on the things that you want us to work on, so to speak.
Stay tuned.
We're kind of just like waiting on a couple of things to fall into place, like, waiting to hear back from Valve, waiting to hear, or waiting to hear back from this sponsor or that sponsor or this opportunity, so that to see if we can like make that idea happen.
Yeah. There's a lot of waiting involved.
Yeah, exactly.
People don't respond to emails very quickly.
No. I try to be good about it, but man, when I wake up and I'm like, I have like 7-8 emails that I have to deal with. I'm like, it's like accounts, so it's like individual plus the emails from within those 7 accounts, and then multiple social medias that I'm okay.
Yeah, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
So, are there any other areas of esports that you would like to get involved in, or have always kind of
yeah, I think like I actually did PR prior to like doing the talent agent stuff, and I have like a marketing degree, so I think like doing something like that in esports would be nice. Definitely, I feel like is needed.
I agree.
Even for myself sometimes, like we're all, I think, very man, I gotta tweet this right now. I feel this, it needs to go out. But yeah, that's definitely like a thing that needs to happen. When you hear, especially like in like other esports, I think for Dota we're pretty good about just kind of doing whatever. We're the Wild West, but even like doing like a seminar or workshop on something like that, I'm like, yeah, you guys, you need to do this or take this into consideration, and like I don't need to be, it doesn't have to be like too hardcore PC, but at the same time you got to understand your audience and understand
like
why these
representing
things are happening.
Sponsors and representing brands,
not just current or past, like even future. I have literally seen a sponsor walk away because of a YouTube video from like years ago.
Yeah.
And I can't blame them because it was very bad. And you put that out there, and you can't. A big sponsor is not going to care that you did that when you were like 13 years old or 15 or whatever, and you were like,
I was just anything to do with anything like that.
Yeah, and the internet is always permanent. That's That's a big one. Is whatever you do on the internet, it's always going to be there at this point.
Yeah. So aspiring players and personalities, don't tweet bad things.
Oh yeah. Or if you're going to tweet it, know that you're doing it, own up to it, and not, and even if you pretend, or even if you delete it, it's there. Archives exist. So
yeah. You got to be careful. For sure. I think that's definitely something that'll become more frequent, like organizations hiring like a PR person or a PR team, or like you said, having workshops where they it's mandatory for their players to have at least a class to get to know
other industries already have it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I know the NBA does it for sure. They do workshops for the players, football, and so all that. With all of those non-endemic, or teams coming in, that's definitely going to be a requirement for them.
And even just stuff like building their own brand as players, because it's, especially with Dota, I think is because people swap around so much, so it's you want to have fans that are dedicated to you, and you want to be able to market yourself to sponsors as well.
Exactly.
So it's in your best interest to learn how to represent.
Right. If you're gonna be a bad boy, then be a bad boy, but not necessarily in a bad boy that's never gonna be able to be sponsored again.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess is the best way to describe it. You can do that.
Yes.
You can be the asshole, but be the asshole that can still be sponsored by a company that can, benefit from something like that.
Exactly. For sure. So, as a final question, do you have any side projects or personal projects that you want to promote or share outside of MoonDuk? Or if you have anything that you're working on with MoonDuk that you want us to keep an eye out for?
I mean, it's just for the MoonDuk stuff, I guess thanks to everybody that supports our tournaments and the ducks and whatnot. And if you guys have any ideas or suggestions for MoonDuk, Dota Cinema stuff, our discords are always available. I guess it's the MoonDuk TV Discord, and I think for Dota Cinema we just use Sunsfan. So Sunsfan Discord. I have no idea. As far as personal stuff, I get pretty busy, so I guess it's just usually my stream, my art stuff. I'll do emotes here and there if I have time, or art commissions.
So
I don't know.
You do take commissions for art?
Yeah, here and there. I don't. It's one of those things again that I don't advertise, but it does happen here and there. I guess for me, instead of a promotion, it's more thank you guys for supporting, I guess, whatever things I fancy.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, thanks so much for coming on to the show. I really appreciate it. I'm actually pretty sure we could have a whole nother show just talking about all the different things.
Exactly.
This was just the tip of the iceberg with eSports.
Exactly.
But yeah, so everybody follow Sajedene. You can see her Twitter over here below her, and please look forward to more episodes of The Grill. We do it monthly. So, and again, thank you, Sajedene, for coming on, and you can follow her.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and you can keep up with Desoladies news at Desoladies on Twitter. You can keep up with me on Twitter at LeapyPeachy. But please stay tuned to the next episode, and we hope you have a wonderful night. Bye.